today's video, we're going to make a smart scale that is going to look like the following. But before we get started, let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. We're going to go ahead and get started by pulling up some reference images of the Smart Scale. This is a popular brand that's on the market right now. And even though we're not going to make this exact version, this is going to inspire the version that we make. We're going to basically bring over the color, the main frontal detail. If you look at the rear of this particular scale, we're not going to model that because it would just make the video too long. But one thing I want you to notice is the reflection there. We're going to do the glass. We're going to do the LCD and the color and scope it all out. But like I said, we're not going to model the back. So this is where we're going to get started, guys. If you want to copy and follow along, go into image search and type in the name of that Withings body comp scale, and I've got the measurements in there for you. So now we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and clear out my scene, and I want to bring in a cube mesh primitive. From there, I want to turn on the measurements in edit mode, and then that way we can see what we're working with. Now I'm now going into my settings, and I'm going to go to Imperial. And I want to work in inches this video. The reason why I'm changing it up is I want you guys to see different ways of doing this. Now bring out the end panel under item, and we can put in the measurements that you saw in my reference file, which I've done here. Now I need to apply the scale, which I just did. And now I'm back in edit mode, and from here we can start sculpting it like we want. So since we already have a cube, I want to bring these edges in here because we're going to bevel these edges of this cube. That's going to give it the rounded look once we get through modeling it out. And now I'm going to clean up the topology so we have an all quad solution. I'm going to do the front and the back. It's pretty easy. And if you guys have been following along with my videos, you will definitely know how to do this. All right, so we're wrapping up the back and we're good to go. So now we still got all quads here. So now what I'm doing then is I'm looking at the shape from the reference, which is off screen, and I'm kind of baking in some loops here that I think I'm going to need in order to get this thing modeled out right. So this is going to represent those two little horizontal lines you saw going across the front. I just did two loop cuts, and then I'm beveling the both of them, and that's going to give me the two strips that I need across the front of it. Now I'm going to grab this big edge loop right here, and I'm going to do something very similar. And this is going to allow us, when we do materials, to go in there and just select those faces and give them a material specifically. This was my approach to getting this done like this. So now I'm going to grab the back of this particular item. We're going to turn these measurements off so it's just not so confusing now we don't need them. I'm going to go in the top orthographic view, and then I'm going to scale it down. And if you look at the reference, when you guys pull up the reference of this particular scale, you see it tapers. It may not taper as much as I just did it, but it's fairly close. Now I'm going to bring in a edge loop around the whole side of it. This is going to help us sculpt out the little cuts in the side here. So I'm going to bevel that edge loop. And I'm just kind of toying with it till I get it to where it looks right. And now I'm going to inset that same bevel, and now I'm going to extrude along normals. I'm going to like cut it inward. And just like that, we make a nice little cut around our surface here. I'm going back into edit mode. And what I want to do is I want to select all of these faces around the front ortho of this model that we have so far. And I already know that from looking at reference, the front of the scale has a glass front. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new object out of that by duplicating it and then hitting P on the keyboard, creating a new object. Now in the outliner, I'm going in and I'm going to go ahead and start renaming some things so that we know what we have. And I want to just move that part of the mesh out a little bit so I can work with it. So I selected everything in edit mode. Now I'm going to hit E to extrude on the y-axis. Not by a whole lot. This is giving that glass thickness because this is just as easy as using solidify modifier. Now I'm going to go in and select everything, hit Shift N to recalculate normals so we don't have any backwards normals there, and we ought to be good for now. But while I'm in here, let's go ahead and select these edges. Now that we've added this thickness, and I'm just kind of making sure I got everybody selected. I want to zoom in a little bit so you guys can see, and I want to bevel these because I'm preparing this part of the geometry for sub D later on when we turn it on. Just a nice little tight bevel just like that. And with that, I'm going to now come back in here and do some measurements. So I basically took the height of the glass, adjusted the height of the body, and made sure that when you put the two of those together, that equated to the total height of the unit. And I went online and looked up what the specs for the dimensions were for it. So now I'm putting it all together. Let me zoom in, make sure that glass is not hovering above the surface, and now you can see there's a little bit of air gap, and there it is. So let me just go ahead and get it a little bit down in here. Now, to be honest with you guys, it's not exactly, it's going to be a little shorter in height than the specs for the unit in this case, because I pushed the glass all like a little bit inward. So it's going to be slightly less, but it's a minuscule amount. All right, now I'm going to parent these two together. All right, so now that we've got all of that out of the way, most part the body, and then we got the glass. Let's do the little circle that's on the front of the unit. So I'm bringing in a circle. I'm going to drop it to 16 verts, and I'm going to size it down about 1 inch. And if you notice where my 3D cursor is, that's where my new mesh primitives will be brought in. And I'm in edit mode, and I'm going to do a similar technique. I've got everything selected in vertices, but first we got to give it some thickness. So now I'm going to extrude on the y-axis back out towards the front of the unit, and now we've got a ridge around the edge. So now what I want to do is I need to fill this thing in, but I don't want to do a big giant n-gon. So I'm going to extrude and scale. And because we have geometry down here, I've got to delete those faces so that I can bridge this with a grid fill. So select all those, delete the faces. Now I can go in edge select mode and grid fill it. Now I'm going to have to do it on the opposite side as well. So let's do that. And now we got something we can work with. We got an all quad circle. So now in the outliner, I'm going to give this a name as well. And let's parent it to that body of the scale. There we go. So now all this stuff's just gonna kind of hang out together. They're gonna click together, glue together, hang out together. All right, so now let's go back to the body and let's start modeling in some detail here. So I need a section here where the LCD screen is going to go. So when the user stands on the scale to look at the data from the perspective of the scale, this is the little screen that you saw in the reference photo. So I'm just using loop cuts because this is a pretty basic shape. I'm sizing it out. I'm not even measuring this part. I'm sizing it out to what looks like the right aspect ratio of these guys. So I'll select this. I'm going to inset it just a little bit. And I want to extrude it on the local z-axis of the scale. And there you go. Now we're going to have to do some other things before we run sub D on it, so those edges stay tight. But first, before we go back to that, let me go in here and let's go ahead and select that cut that we did on the side of the body. And I want to create a vertex group so that if we lose this selection, we can go back in very quickly with a click of a button and re-select it. Just like a bookmark, if you will. That's how I'm treating it. I'm bouncing a little bit, but that's on purpose. So let's go back to our circle that we made. Go to edit mode, edge select mode, and I want to grab all these edges. I want to put a nice little tight bevel on these as well in preparation for sub D. That looks good enough. And let's do an edge loop here for the purpose of just kind of helping that geometry keep its structural integrity like I've described on other videos. Now I'm in a piece of software called Affinity Designer. You can also use GIMP and plenty other free tools and do something very similar. The reason why I like this is less than Adobe, which I have Illustrator as well, but this is a vector-based program. So when I do labels and typically do artwork for my 3D models, I always use vector because it scales. It scales with the same resolution. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm looking at reference off screen again, and I picked a screen that I thought might look good for the model, and I'm recreating it in vector. I usually don't show you guys this because I know you guys are here to see the 3D piece of it, but this is part of what has to be done sometimes. You have to make things if you can't find a high quality label or a high quality image. You have to go in there and make it. So at least want to show you guys how to quickly do that. And the reason why I'm kind of moving around in here looking for things is I hadn't used this in a while. I don't do a whole lot of vector artwork anymore. I used to do it daily, but I hadn't done a whole lot of this in many months. But like riding a bike, once you start pedaling, it all comes back. So. And you'll see the result we get. All right, let me just move this down a little bit. Bring in my text tool. I'm gonna put the numbers in here. There's like a range. And it's gonna show, at least on our model, that for display purposes, that the range, the vascular age range is optimal. It's set to optimal. And I'm not trying to match fonts or anything like that. I'm just using a generic sans serif font. Right now, I believe this is Arial. And then that'll change to a more stylized font offline. And this right here, what I'm making now is the actual, it's a graph. It's like a bar graph. It looks like a slider. I mean, I'm not going to get into like a UX discussion on this video, but if I were to have designed that for this company, I would not have used a design that is supposedly like informational that looks like something functional. Does that make sense? So it looks like a slider, but I believe it's a graph. And the little circle that you're going to see here in a second is meant to show you where you are in that graph. I believe I'm correct in that. I don't think it's functional, because it doesn't make sense for you to stand on the scale, have to bend down there, slide that thing with your finger. All right, just kind of playing with the snapping here and just bringing in some primitive shapes. And I am changing stroke and feel to match what I see in reference. And before any of you dip out on the video, because I'm sitting here doing vector artwork, just stay tuned. This doesn't last much longer. I just want to show this as part of the process for those who want to see more of the whole process of how the sausage is made, if you will. And I typically, like I said, don't show this. All right, so I need to make sure in this piece of software that the background is set to transparent. In Illustrator, you don't have to do that. So now I'm going back in here with materials, and I'm starting to create a first material for the body of the scale. And I'll come back a couple of times in the video and change this. I just want to get it kind of over the target, if you will. And the reason why I'm doing this instead of committing all the way through it is I'm just kind of doing this piecemeal. So I know I still have some modeling to do, not much, but a little bit of modeling to do on it. This helps me visualize the whole final product a little bit better. So now what we're doing, and I'm going to cut some of this out because, I mean, you guys ought to know how to do this by now. I'm bringing in that graphic artwork and I'm UV unwrapping it and setting it up into that little extruded section for the screen that we created earlier in the video. So I'm just kind of scaling my selection here. And now I am going into the shader editor. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the text and the colors of that image to give off light. I want to be super subtle, but I'm just kind of showing you my node setup to do that. So I'm bringing in a mixed color off of that original image, and I'm using the alpha of that image into the factor, because where it's black, it's going to be transparent, just like with color channels in Photoshop. It's the same, literally it's the same thing, like where you do it masks. So now I'm bringing in a duplicate. I set the duplicate as like a new entity with a new data block. I set it to non-color, so it forces black and white. And I'm bringing the color of that into the emission of the principal. And I'm getting the both images to share the same mapping and the same UV map data. So they'll always be lined up. And now I just play with the strength, and if it's subtle because we're in look dev mode, but you can see that the white text, the green text, and all that got lighter, but the black stayed the same. It didn't look blown out in the back. All right. So now that I explained that, let's go back in here into my asset manager. I'm going to bring in one of my materials that you can find for free on Blender Kit, and basically pull in the glass shader. So this is a realistic glass shader for cycles that I created. I'm just going to drag it over there, and bam, now we got glass. That didn't take long. All right, so now I'm going to go back in here because the shape of the body looks a bit muddy because we hadn't tightened it up. I've applied sub D offline, and now I'm going here selecting these edges and tighten it up a little bit. I'm going to do this in more detail in that cut, so I'm just going to disable sub D so I can select my edges and tight little bevels. Yeah, that looks good. I like it. Now, what I did around the part where the screen is I ended up selecting all those edges and just used mean crease. You don't see it yet, but you will here in the video. But I'm not going to show how to do it in the video because I actually have a dedicated short on how to do that when you're running sub D. All right, so I'm going in here. I'm tweaking the color now. I'm tweaking the material on the body because it was a little bit too light. I'll bring some metallic attributes in. Playing with the roughness. I don't want it too shiny because we got that big giant glass face, so we really don't need to do that. All right, so now I'm going to go into my little circle here and make the material for it real quick. So I'm bringing in a wave texture, and I'm bringing in a mapping and a texture coordinate node because I'm using Node Wrangler to do it. Drop wave into color, and you'll see I'm just kind of playing with some settings here. If you mimic my settings, you'll get something very similar. One thing to note, in scale, if you set it to 0, it'll center that wave ring up. All right, so that's pretty much it on that. So now I'm going in here and I'm selecting these faces that I mentioned in the beginning of the video when we were kind of sculpting out and planning for these lines. I'm selecting them and I'm applying a different texture to these guys. And then you see how fat the selection is? The way you tighten it up is that you leave all that selected and then you run a mean crease on it and it'll tighten it up. I'm just naming stuff right now. So see how thick all those lines are? You just mean crease them. You go into edit mode, they'll be selected. And you just run mean crease across all of it and it tightens everything up. So if you look in the video right here, you can see the little red outline around them a little bit. That's how I solved that problem. This is looking good. Now my circle is a little too light in color. So what I want to do is I'm copying from the lines. I'm going to go back in here where the circle is and I'm going to paste it. Boom. And it's just, they're the same color. And you can still see the little rings in there too. All right, so we're going to go back to render mode. And let's save our file. Now what I want to do is we've got all the modeling done. I'm going to bring in a ground plane because we're going to put a little scene together. Nothing real fancy. And I want to subdivide that plane that I brought in. And if you'd like, you can scale it up. And I'm going to select the body of the scale and I'm going to front ortho view and I want to bring it up above the ground plane here. Because this is going to be like the surface that the scale sits on. And now I want to rotate it so that the front of the scale is facing the top of the scene, or top of the world to be more specific. And then I'm going to bring it down. And then I'm going to move my ground plane, in my case, up a little bit just so it doesn't get clipped at the bottom. So now I've positioned my camera here. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I'm just kind of lining my camera up. So I've got it set at a focal length of 80 millimeters. That's a nice portrait shot. It's a little bit flatter perspective. It doesn't have that lens distortion. And I'm just playing with my test lights. I'm going to remove my test lights out of this scene here because that's all they were, just so I could see what I was doing in cycles. And what I ended up doing is I went into Blender Kit. I brought in a texture for the ground plane just to save time. And now I'm in the world settings for the HDRI. And I'm going to bring two HDRIs in. One, the peppermint here that everybody who uses Blender is pretty famous. You know, you can get these off of HDRI Haven, I believe is where these came from. I want to pull in the reflections from those windows on the front of the scale to make it look a little bit more realistic. However, I'm not relying on the lighting from that particular image to light this scene. And you see I keep cranking it down. I'm cranking the background down because it cranks down the intensity. So what I want to do is I want to bring another HDRI in to basically give me the lighting for the scene, but I specifically want to pull in the reflections from that peppermint image, if that makes sense. And I'm going to show you guys how to do that. It's very easy. So right now I'm just kind of I'm rotating the peppermint scene around because I'm trying to get the reflections on that surface the way I think artistically I'd like for it to look. And I'm one of those people, like, I'll change it 50 million times. That's why a lot of times in my videos I don't show you guys this, because I could burn 5 minutes just kind of screwing with getting that lighting just the way I want it. So let's make a duplicate of peppermint. I'm gonna bring in a mixed color node. I'm gonna drop the mixed color node between the background and the first peppermint. I'm gonna bring in color from the second one to slot A, the original peppermint slot B. I'm gonna play with the factor because I want one to have more bias than the other, and in this case I want the new image, which I changed it to an outdoor beach scene. I want that one to have more bias. So you notice I'm scrolling the factor towards the left. That's pushing it towards slot A's bias. It's biasing it to slot A. And then I'm playing with the overall intensity just to kind of globally control the amount of intensity of the lighting in the scene. So this is what we come up with right here. And let's show you the final product. And there you are. This is what we came up with, guys. If you follow this tutorial, you'll have something very similar, if not something better. Feel free to pull in reference photos and model the back. Had I done it, this video would have been probably another 10 minutes long, so I intentionally omitted it. If you like my content and my videos, please do me a big favor. It helps out a lot. Like and subscribe for more. There'll be more items coming very soon, and look forward to having you guys on here. Thank you so much and take care. Happy blendering. I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out.